do it.
Okay, I have 7 o'clock. I am broadcasting and
right.
we are live.
Great. Thank you, Andy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for 2021 at 7 o'clock. And this is the Newburyport Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for January 12th, 2021 via Zoom. My name is Mark Moore, the Vice Chair, and I'm calling the meeting to order as our Chair, Rob Chimpetti, can't be here tonight. Luckily for all on this call, and especially me as always, we have the City Planning Director, Andy Port, driving the presentation visuals and managing the participation of our attendees, as well as our City Planner, Caitlin Sullivan. And I also want to introduce our note taker, Gretchen Joy, as we always need to recognize her efforts. I will start with a roll call to ensure that we have the proper quorum tonight. And as I mentioned earlier, I am Mark Moore, Vice Chair, obviously in attendance. Rob Chimpetti, our Chair, is absent. I'll now introduce each member and ask that they respond with here. Secretary Stephen Delisle.
Here.
Member Rachel Webb.
Here.
Member Ken Swanton.
Here.
Associate Member Walter Chagnon.
Here.
Finding 5 members present, we have a quorum and can proceed with the meeting, and all members will be voting tonight. For those new to the zoning board meetings and or new to the Zoom format, as we continue to deal with this pandemic, we find it helpful to describe the format of the meeting and how it will flow. With the roll call completed, we now move on to public hearings. For this portion, I will start by reading a description of the public notice to identify the application to be presented and discussed. I will then ask for the applicant to present their case, for lack of a better word, and often it's the applicant's legal counsel or architect or designer that presents the proposed changes to the property. Once the presentation is complete, we then move to the reason why these gatherings, although virtual now, are called public hearings. We take public comment. I then ask any member of the public attendees who wish to comment on this proposal to do so. It's a vital part of making these public hearings robust exchanges of thoughts and ideas. I'll start by asking anyone in virtual attendance who wishes to comment to raise their hand electronically using the mouse and cursor to utilize the raise hand icon in the attendees window on the computer. Andy Port or I will announce those that wish to speak, and please remember to unmute yourself before you start. We ask that before starting to comment, you provide your name and address clearly for the record, and keep your comments succinct and to the point so others who may wish to comment can efficiently participate. We then proceed with public comment until raised hands are exhausted. Once all public comments have been heard, that portion of the hearing is closed and we move on to questions from the board. The board, sometimes inspired by public comments, will then question the applicant or any of the team to flesh out further detail and to aid in their decision. Once the board has exhausted questioning, I will close that portion of the meeting and move on to deliberations. Deliberations in the public forum is the cornerstone of the public hearing. Everything the board discusses about the application is done in public or virtual public now, so that all in attendance get to hear the thought process of each member and the board as a whole as it moves towards a decision. During the process, it sometimes becomes evident that the board may feel it either needs more information or is leaning in opposition for one reason or another, and we as a board will move to continue the application until we can obtain further information or give the applicant the opportunity to ask for continuance to address any concerns before closing deliberations and going to a formal vote, which has consequences for the applicant with respect to timing and cost. Once deliberations are complete, I will then seek a motion from the board, and when seconded, a vote will be called. Because we use Robert's Rules of Order, you will hear a motion on the application made in the affirmative or to approve, even if a board member making the motion plans to vote to deny. If the application passes, the happy applicant moves on. I then close that application and move on to the next, applying all the same rules. All right, that's it. I've called the roll. We have a quorum. Let's move forward. Our first application on tonight's docket is Michael Gray, 1214 Harrison Street, 2020-067. An appeal continued from 12/8/20. Appeal of a notice of violation issued on 8/11/20 by the zoning administrator. Might we hear from the applicant? I believe it's David Mack might be in attendance.
Ma'am, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can everyone hear me okay?
Sure can.
I think we're here on the appeal. We've requested a continuance, I think, to February 23rd. This is the appeal of the zoning determination. And we're also here, I think, to finalize, I don't think there's a public hearing, but we're here to finalize the decision that was made at the prior hearing in December on our approval to start construction again.
It's true. I also neglected to mention at the end of the meeting, when the public hearing is over, we'll then do the business meeting where that will come up. So that was, I missed that part of the intro.
Yeah, I believe I had spoken either to Caitlin or to Andy, and because I have another hearing after this, that we were going to put the this matter in its entirety on first, so I could get off before my next hearing. Has that not been communicated? I believe that.
You know, I believe that's true, Andy. That I do now recall seeing that, right? We did. I believe Rob, before he had to step away, had agreed to do that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, so on the appeal, I think we've submitted a request for a continuance like we have on multiple occasions before, because we hope that with the decision that hopefully is going to be formally issued in its final form tonight, we won't need to go forward with the appeal, but out of the abundance of caution, until the decision is actually inked and the appeal period expires on that decision, we want to keep that appeal alive. So we've requested a continuance to the 23rd of February.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Do we have any discussion from the board on the request to continue this appeal to 2/23/21?
I'll make a motion if you're looking for that, Mr. Vice Chair.
I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to continue this case number 2020-067, the appeal of the notice of violation from August 11th to our zoning board meeting on February 23rd.
This is
I'll
Bud
second
Shagnon.
that.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead, Bud.
All right, thank you, Bud Shagnon. I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion to grant the continuance to 2/23/21 for case 2020-067. It was made by Rachel Webb, seconded by Bud Shagnon. We will now take a vote. Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Ms. Webb.
Yes.
Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Chagnon.
Yes,
And Mr. Maury, I vote yes as well. All in the affirmative. The continuance is granted. Right now, at the request of the applicant, we are going to move to review the draft decision on 1214 Harrison Street and ask if there's any comments, if the board agrees with the decision and how it's presented. I can say that Mr. Ciampetti, in his absence, said that he did vote in approval, and he wanted me to make sure he mentioned that as written, he is fine with the decision and how it's put down. Is there any other discussion on that?
Chair, this is Bud Shagnon. I just had one question, and it might be semantics.
Mm-hmm.
I know the decision in the beginning, a couple of paragraphs, states that the deck will be removed from the existing plans. But when we go into the heart of the decision, the section that's called plans and documents, it falls silent on that. And I just wanted to make sure that the rest of the board was comfortable with that, that it's not brought out in the plans and documents section of the decision. It's in the forward, if you will.
This is Andy. I can definitely indicate that I think that's the appropriate placement of that, and not a problem. That's, again, just the office's opinion, but I don't see that as being an issue, and I think that's pretty appropriate.
Okay, thank you, Andy.
Okay, with that change. Any other comments?
Can I ask a question? This is Mr. Mack.
Sure.
I had sent, I don't know whether the decision as drafted included a couple very minor edits that I had suggested. I don't know whether that's been presented, which clarified that the moratorium on occupancy would commence upon issuance of the certificate of occupancy, as opposed to saying upon or after the construction project is completed and issuance of a certificate of occupancy.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Mack, that change was incorporated.
Okay, good, thank you. I don't suppose the board would consider a 5-month moratorium now that 5 weeks after we thought we had a decision. You know, I understand it takes quite a while to put a decision in paper, but it's been 5 full weeks since we had what we thought an approval of our request.
Yeah, and apologize, Attorney Mack. Generally speaking, the chair felt comfortable with the decision as written by the department effectuating the board's vote, but did feel it was very important, given the difficulty with this particular project or hearing, that the full board should be able to take a look at that written decision as well. So that's the only reason we're here.
All right, fair enough.
All right, so we have the decision as written with the necessary edits to it. Is everyone comfortable with that? Are we comfortable with?
I mean, I am Ken Swanton.
Okay.
I
Is
am
there-
as well, Rachel Webb. Do we need to vote on this or just?
Yeah, I think we should. So I think a motion to approve the draft decision.
So moved. I'll move that ZBA approves the decision as written for 12 Harrison Street.
Second, Ken Swanton.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the decision as written, made by Rachel Webb, seconded by Ken Swanton, and we'll now take the vote on that. Mr. Delisle,
Yes.
Ms. Webb,
Yes.
Mr. Swanton,
Yes.
Mr. Chagnon,
Yes.
and Mr. Moore. I vote yes as well, all in the affirmative. So as written, that decision is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you accommodating me and taking us early.
You're welcome.
Okay.
So now with that, we will now move back to our second public hearing of the night, and this is Michael Shea, 3 Liberty Street, application 2020-084, a variance continued from the 24th of November last year to replace current fixed window with a window that opens. And I understand there's a request to withdraw. I don't know if is anyone representing the applicant on the call.
Yeah, I don't see anyone in our audience that appears to be the applicant.
Okay.
But as
Mr.
Mr. Chairman,
Chair-
this is Mr. Delisle. Just a quick question here. I was not in attendance for the hearing on this matter for 3 Liberty Street. And I should probably withdraw or recuse myself from the request to withdraw, I would think.
I would agree with that.
Yep. So if we can note that in the record. Thank you.
Thank you both.
So if Mr. Delisle are recused from that, we have a request to withdraw. We usually do this without prejudice for the application 2020-084 for 3 Liberty Street, and we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion. It's Rachel Webb to withdraw 3 Liberty Street 2020-84 variance.
Second, Ken Swanton.
Okay.
Let's get the motioning team in motion here. So we have a motion to grant the request to withdraw without prejudice, application 2020-084 made by Rachel Webb, seconded by Ken Swanton. We now take the vote. Mr. Delisle.
He can't.
I'm recusing myself.
Oh, I'm sorry,
from this
Mike.
one.
Yep, horrible memory. I already forgot. Mr. Delisle is recused. Ms. Webb,
Yes.
Mr. Swanton,
Yes.
Mr. Chagnon,
Yes.
and Mr. Moore says yes. That's 4 in the affirmative. Therefore, the withdrawal without prejudice is granted. Mr. Delisle is back in now for the discussion. For the next application on the docket, which is for 68 Middle Street. Application 2020-086, dimensional variance continued from the short, brief meeting from 12/8. Tonight we have a request to withdraw. And the variance was going to be needed to allow an accessory garage to be built within the side and rear yard setbacks. Might we hear from the applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to add confusion to everything regarding this application, Lisa Mead, Teller and Costa, on behalf of Windward Shaw LLC. I apologize for not introducing myself. So the board might remember that we had a special permit for nonconformities, which reduced this existing used as 4-family, legal 3-family to a 2-family with the construction of a garage at the rear of the property. And we requested a special permit for nonconformities for that, as well as a dimensional variance for the garage. Right before the last hearing, pretty close to right before the last hearing, the zoning code enforcement officer made a determination that she was mistaken on her denial on our original request, and that she thought a dimensional variance was not required for the accessory structure located within the 6 foot of the rear yard setback for accessory structures. There was quite a discussion on the board regarding that. And since we had received that notice late, we requested a continuance for the dimensional variance, and the board granted the special permit for nonconformities. You might recall that all of the neighbors were there in support of this project. So we continued the dimensional variance with the hope that we would hear something more definitive. And as of the end of last week, or the middle of last week, we submitted a presentation for our dimensional variance this evening, thinking that we would just do belt and suspenders. And should the zoning code enforcement officer make a different determination or a more clear written determination, nonetheless, we would seek a dimensional variance should that be overturned at some point in time, or should the ordinance change. But just so that it was clear that my applicant could move forward, my client could move forward with the construction of the garage. After we had submitted that late Friday or early Friday, sometime on Friday, we did get maybe it was even Thursday, a more clear determination by the zoning code enforcement officer that it was clearly her opinion continued to be that a dimensional variance was not required. And so in deference to the zoning code enforcement officer and her opinion, and not wanting to put my client through a hearing, we filed a request for a variance, a request to withdraw the variance application. This afternoon late, it came to my attention from staff that in fact, the board may want to have a much larger discussion related to section 6F of the ordinance and its interpretation, and may request that this application be continued again. As a result, if in fact that's the case, my client would like to move forward with the request for the variance and have that discussion with the board, seek the board's determination on the variance, which I hope would be favorable given our discussion at the last meeting, and given the hardships related to the lot, which I will go through shortly, and not actually request a withdrawal. And then the board can do whatever the board wants to do with the zoning code enforcement officer relative to the changed interpretation with regards to 6F. And if it pleases the board, I would like to present my variance application and have the board make a determination.
Thank you, Attorney Mead. I'm just going to question what the board, given that the sticking point of the last meeting was over the interpretation. The applicant has presented a way to make sure that a decision can be rendered tonight. I'd like to proceed first with a vote, or at least get some discussion on whether the board would agree with the new interpretation of the variance rules as it pertains to this case and going forward, and whether or not the request to withdraw would be granted. And if that's not going to happen, then I would suggest that the procedure would be, in order to be fair to the applicant, would be to go ahead with the variance.
If I could, Mr.
Sure.
Chair,
Yeah.
just for a moment, Procedurally, and I don't know if city solicitor's on tonight or not,
Mhm.
but procedurally, you don't actually have, the board does not actually have a question before it. There's no appeal of the zoning code enforcement officer's determination, if you will. I have a dimensional variance in front of the board based upon a determination that was made in whenever it was, October maybe. So I don't know. I mean, Mr. Port, if the city solicitor's on, he can chime in. I don't know that the question of the interpretation, which is why I want to go forward with the dimensional variance, with the question of the interpretation is properly before the board at this time. You may have a discussion about it.
No, that
Understood.
I think-
I don't think that Mark was suggesting that be a formal proceeding per se, but I did think that Mark is correct to suggest that the board might want to have some brief discussion or overview of
Right.
what that determination was.
Okay, then I misunderstood the chair. I just wanted to make sure that.
Yeah, I might not have made myself clear, but I just thought a brief discussion on why, and I think the dimensional variance option that you present makes sense tonight because of all the questions that were brought up, and this is not going to be a formal discussion of that. It's not going to be drawn out. I just wanted to get a quick a temperature of the board on.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Sure, please.
Just from the office's perspective, looking at this, the new, information or approach here.
Mhm.
The office has no objection to what Attorney Mead has put out as far as the process to proceed, mainly because we could conceive the board, if the board feels comfortable with the same project, essentially that was approved via special permit at the previous meeting, granting the variance, then the variance could indicate that the variance has been granted to the extent needed. And again, as Attorney Mead pointed out, the board may want to have further discussion about the interpretation of this provision or others with the zoning administrator or legal counsel, but wouldn't necessarily need to hold up this particular project, which had already been given a previous form of relief.
Thank you, and I think that's fair, and that's a good suggestion. So maybe perhaps the best thing to do is, to have Attorney Mead proceed with the dimensional variance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So as the board might recall, so Andy, I have a presentation. I don't know if you have it available. While he's pulling that up, the board might recall that this property is located at 68 Middle Street. There's currently a 4-family, a legal 3-family, but has been used for a number of years as a 4-family on the property. And the applicant received a modification to a pre-existing non-conforming structure and use to reduce that to a 2-family and to change the rear portion of the building and to construct a freestanding 2-car garage at the rear of the property.
Apologies, Attorney Mead, just wanted to interject. When did you submit the slides for this evening? Was that?
Last Thursday, maybe Wednesday, Thursday.
Okay.
Andy, it's Caitlin. It should be towards the bottom of the project entry.
Yeah, it's like second to last, something like that.
21.
Yeah.
So the property is non-conforming for lot area. There's 5,487 square feet, where 15,000 are required. It has frontage of 38.6, where 120 is required. Front setback of 11.1, where 25 is required. Both side setbacks are under the 20 feet at 0.10 and 16.6. And the lot coverage is 31.3 with a proposal of 33.4, where 25 is required. And the open space is 31.3% with a proposal of 17.5, where 40 is required. Thank you very much, Andy. So the applicant, and here's the property, thank you. So as you can see from the property, it has the shape is unique, as was pointed out at the last meeting. So it obviously it's a long, narrow piece, but it goes to the back and it has this jog in the rear of the back, and where the garage is proposed to be located. And in addition to that, the topography drops from Middle Street back to the rear of the lot. such that they're actually going to have to construct retaining walls around the garage to hold up the neighbor's property on both sides. So from the shape of the lot, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to build a functional garage, the 22 by 24 accessory garage. And instead of it being a rectangular shape that is flush with Middle Street, as I noted earlier, the lot juts diagonally inward at an angle off the street. And then, of course, there's the jog at the rear of the street, in addition to the drop in the topography. In addition to that, one of the other hardships, while it can't be the only hardship, is that there's a financial hardship. And as the board is aware, the applicant originally intended to use this project as a 3-family, which would have only required special permits. However, based upon the negotiations and discussions with the neighbors, the project was reduced again to a 2-family with the construction of the garage, which makes a difference from a financial point of view relative to the 2 residential units that would be constructed in there. And so as a result, while financial hardship alone is not enough to justify the grant of a variance, it can be a factor when combined with the other hardships that might support the grant of a variance. And here we have the shape of the lot. The proposal also does not derogate from the intent and purpose of the ordinance. Here's the, this is the proposed garage to be constructed. The proposal does not derogate from the intent and purpose of the ordinance, as the location of the proposed accessory is placed at a location that can be best function as an accessory garage despite the dimensional limitations of the lot. And further, the proposed change won't be detrimental to the neighborhood, as there will be no negative impacts on any of the neighbors. And in addition, the contractor is making sure to support the neighbors' properties and install a number of improvements around the property to address neighbors' concerns. If you take a look around the neighborhood, there's a number of accessory structures. Thank you. This is the My Maps view. A number of accessory structures located on at least less than 6 feet from either the side or rear boundaries. And so it also does not derogate from that purpose, and it's not a grant of relief that would be different than any other property or other properties in the neighborhood. So currently, the applicant has now a special permit for nonconformities, but the applicant would also request that the board grant a variance to allow the construction of the garage in the rear yard setback where 6 feet is required. The proposal would put the garage at 3.5 and 3.9 on the side and 4 feet from the rear lot line. And with that, the applicant respectfully requests the board grant a variance based upon those factors.
Thank you. Okay, with the applicant is done discussing the particulars of the variance that's being desired. Do we have any public comments? So right now, we'll seek public comment. Any of the attendees that wishes to comment on this application, please raise your hand electronically and you'll be recognized.
First person we have is Fred Nahart.
Go ahead, Mr. Nadar.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Fred Needhart. I live at 70 Middle Street in the city. I'm a direct abutter to the project, and I support this variance. The developer, the project team has worked very hard with the neighborhood group to come up with a compromise that's consistent with the neighborhood standards in our opinion, and I totally support this variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to electronically raise their hand and comment on this application? Looks like I see one.
Stephanie Nikitich.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stephanie Nikitich, 93 High Street. I would like to thank the applicant for moving forward with the application for a variance, which I think is required. And I also support the variance, so I hope you will grant it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to comment on that application at this time? Don't see any hands.
Seeing no others at this time, Chair.
All right. Seeing no other hands, I will close public comment and we'll go to questions from the board. And I'll just start in the usual order. Mr. Delisle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions for Attorney Mead relative to this application. We fully went over this on December the 8th, and I will leave. Those will be the end of my my questions. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Delisle. Ms. Webb.
I too have no questions. I feel as though this application was thoroughly presented and discussed at our previous meeting. Thank you.
Excellent. Mr. Swanton.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we had a very thorough discussion last time. I thought the neighbor, and Fred Niehart in particular, summarized things really well about how this helps the neighborhood as part of an overall plan. So I also have no questions.
Excellent. Mr. Chagnon.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I've got no questions. I agree with the rest of the board. I think our previous discussions kind of vetted this out quite well, so I'm comfortable with going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chagnon. And I agree with my colleagues here that I don't have any questions, and this has been vetted quite thoroughly previously. So with that, I will close the questions and we'll go to deliberations, where everyone in attendance gets to hear the thought process as we move towards a decision. So very quickly, we're right back to Mr. Delisle. Do you have any comments, deliberations?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have some comments here. Firstly, I appreciate the procedure that we're following here to go forward and discuss this in the context of the variance. I think that it's best for everyone, and I do apologize to Attorney Mead and her client for even for the suffering that they had to go through in our last meeting with regard to the issue with the new interpretation. But it's good that we're going to go forward in this manner. And in that regard, I think that here we do have a very oddly shaped lot. In fact, I'm not a huge fan of the oddly shaped lot argument, but this is one of the strangest shaped lots I think that we've encountered during my time on the board with respect to the almost perfect parallelogram with a perfect square attached to the end. It's an interestingly shaped lot. So I think that based on the lot shape, we certainly meet point one of the variance 4-part test. The conditions and circumstances are unique to the applicant's lot. I think the strict application of the provisions of this chapter would in fact deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of the lot, because you'd have this end part of the lot really not being very useful at all in terms of what could be done with it. So I think that that second portion of the test is passed as well. The third portion is passed, in my opinion. The unique conditions are not the result of the applicant. And the fourth portion of the test, the relief would not constitute a grant of a special privilege. I don't believe that would be the case here under in this, with respect to this application, as there are many accessory structures in the neighborhood and on Middle Street. So I think that I am in full support of this application and the variance required. Thanks.
Excellent, Mr. Delisle. Well said, well put. Ms. Webb.
I as well am in full support of this proposed variance for all of the reasons that Mr. Delisle just detailed so perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Swanton.
I too support this proposed variance. I think Mr. Delisle summarized the criteria really well. The neighbors have talked about how it helps the neighborhood, and I also think it helps the city at large, just outside the neighborhood. I mean, to treat this very unusual lot this way and in working with the neighbors and coming up with this constructive solution. So I can support this.
Excellent. Mr. Chagnon.
Yeah, I have to agree with the rest of the board. Thank you, Mr. Delisle, for expressing everyone's opinion. Very well done. So I can support this this variance. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I will just agree with my colleagues that Mr. Delisle did a wonderful job of explaining why I think the board as a whole can support this going forward. So with that, we will close discussion deliberation, and I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Delisle, I'll make the motion to grant the variance application for 68 Middle Street, application number 2020-86.
I'll second it. Rachel Webb.
Okay, with the motion made by Mr. Delisle, seconded by Ms. Webb. Mr. Delisle, would you be opposed to an addendum like mentioning that we will approve the dimensional variance to the extent that it's needed?
Yes,
Just add that
we
little
can approve the,
verbiage in there.
yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Excellent. So with that said, we have a motion made and approved, and seconded by Ms. Webb. We now go to a vote. Mr. Delisle,
Yes,
Ms. Webb,
Yes.
Mr. Swanton,
Yes.
Mr. Chagnon,
Yes.
Mr. Moore, yes. All in the affirmative, variance to the extent that it's needed is granted, and the applicant moves forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Delisle, I didn't mind at all the discussion at the last meeting. I thought it was very informative. So thank you.
well,
Thank you all. With that, we move on to the next application on tonight's docket, and that is for 6 Caldwell's Court. It is application 2020-087, a special permit to allow for an in-law apartment above an existing garage. Might we hear from the applicant, which I believe is Eliza Beauvais?
Elisa.
Elisa. You know, I should have known it was spelled that way.
That's okay. I am here with my husband, Harry Bovey.
Hello. Please go right ahead.
Oh, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes,
Oh,
and these, this is Andy Port. I have the graphics that you've submitted, so if you'd like to show anything in particular, feel free to identify them and I'll pull them up. Otherwise, I'll pull up what's most relevant.
Yeah, so we did submit the floor plan that is above an existing 2-car garage structure. This has been approved by the prior owner. They were going to move forward with completing the construction, but when we purchased it, we weren't prepared to do that. So at this time, we do have a need to move my father in. So yes, you've pulled up the plans. I appreciate that. And you can see in the upper left-hand corner, actually, Gary Ingalls is also remotely, he's not with us, but he's also on, who's going to be doing the construction. And so we've sort of gone through the process to make sure that we have everything in place that we need, but nothing is changing to our actual existing structure. It's just finishing internally to make it into a livable space. It's already framed. It just needs to have, obviously the walls put up, the electricity, and the bathroom will need to be plumbed. It will have its own separate entryway, but we can still access from the house as well.
Okay, excellent. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't have anything.
Okay.
Unless you have questions for us.
We may. But first, if there's nothing else to present, we'll move on to public comment. So if there's anyone in attendance that would like to comment on this application, please electronically raise your hand to be recognized. Don't see any.
Not seeing any, Chair.
All right, seeing none, we will close public comment and move to questions of the applicant. Mr. Delisle, do you have any questions?
I do. Ms. Bovee, just to sort of kind of take you through the findings that we need to make, I'm going to just ask you a couple questions. You said in your remarks that it's your father that's going to be moving into the in-law unit.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Yes. And
Yes.
could you just sort of speak a little bit as to how big the in-law apartment unit will be in terms of square footage?
Well, it's 28 times 24.
I think it was 672. Is that?
Or
Hold
was
on.
it 627? I see 627 in my materials here, but I just wanted to make sure that that's what you guys have as the square footage.
Yes, my husband was going to go confirm it. I have all the paperwork in front of me. I'm so sorry that I can't locate it off the top of my head.
No, that's okay.
This
That's
is Andy.
okay.
Report. In our staff report, we have it down as the 627.
Yeah, that'd be, that's correct.
Okay.
24 by 28.
That's good. Okay. Thank you. Those are all the questions I have at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Delisle. Ms. Webb, do you have any questions for the applicant?
So let's see, our staff report says that there's a space for 3 vehicles. So does your plan show those parking space locations?
You cut out for 1 second. Could you please repeat that?
Sure. Just saying that our staff report shows there is sufficient space for at least 3 vehicles. I was just looking to see that, and I'm looking at the graphic now on the screen.
There's actually 5. We have a huge driveway, and my dad doesn't drive anyway. But there won't be any change in the driveway. It's sufficient.
Okay. And in terms of context, is the location here, you kind of, I'm not really familiar with where Caldwell's Court is. Is it sort of behind the Park Lunch in the middle of the block?
Exactly.
Yes, it's exactly behind Park Lunch.
So you just have the singular access in the one driveway, or is there another access point?
Right, we have the one, if you pull into the parking lot, which is also our street, Caldwell's Court, and you go straight back, that's the driveway, yeah.
Okay. So this garage was already built and you're just looking to, the second floor space was undeveloped and you're looking to finish it out as an in-law unit.
Right, it's already framed, it's sort of ready to go. We just need to actually, the garage has been there since we purchased the house. And so now we just need to actually get the insulation and the wall, utilities, right?
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, that's very helpful graphic. Thanks, Sandy.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Webb. Mr. Swanton, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I appreciate my colleagues' questions. They kind of covered mine. I drove over to Park Lunch today and looked back there. You can't even really see the garage from the street. So it's
Right.
kind of just tucked in back there. And so I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chagnon?
I've got no questions, Chair. Our colleagues asked everything I was wondering about, so I'm all set. Thank you.
Excellent. And I agree, the questions the colleagues have had so far have sufficed for me. So I will close the questioning part and move on to deliberations. And remember, we're deliberating about granting an in-law permit for this So special permit findings pursuant to 10H7. So if we could frame discussion around in-law apartment, that would be helpful in fashioning things going forward. So I'll start with Mr. Delisle. I have an audio issue, so we'll move
I'm
on.
sorry. I
Oh, there we go. You
hadn't
muted.
unmuted my. I'm so sorry. I hadn't unmuted myself, but I was talking up a storm.
It was probably great, but you have to repeat
It
it
was
now.
really good. I don't think I'll be able to do it as well the second time.
Give it a shot.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Moore. So we've heard from the Bovies, and I think that they've hit a lot of the points for us for our special permit findings for the in-law apartment. The first finding that we have to make is that the in-law apartment will be occupied by parents, grandparents, etc. And we've heard that it's going to be Ms. Bovie's father who will be living there. So that first point is satisfied. The dimensional requirements of the zoning ordinance are otherwise met. And this is an existing structure that's going to be modified. So I think that that second point is satisfied as well. The gross floor area of the in-law apartment shall not exceed 900 square feet. We've heard and seen in the materials that it's going to be approximately 627 square feet. So I think we're good on point 3 as well. Number 4, reasonable conditions granting the special permit. I don't think we need to get into that because we're comfortable with the parking in the driveway as it exists. So that prong is satisfied as well. The 5th, health, safety, and building codes will be met, and that would be something that the Bovies would be responsible for working out otherwise. So I think that takes us through the requirements for the in-law apartment, except there are some other additional obligations that the applicant would have to satisfy, but I don't think we need to get into those for the findings that we're making this evening. So I think that with respect to the special permit for the in-law apartment, I believe that they have satisfied the requirements for such a permit. With respect to the special permit findings, I think that those are likely satisfied as well. I'll let one of my colleagues run through that long list, and I'll end my remarks there. But I can support this, the special permit for an in-law apartment and the special permit generally.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Delisle. Ms. Webb, you'd like to take the ball and run with it from here?
Sure. I too support the detail Mr. Delisle just provided about the compliance of the proposal with the in-law special permit findings. These more general special permit findings, the uses listed in the table of use regulations. It is an essential and desirable to the public convenience or welfare because Newburyport needs these various types of housing. The requested use is not going to create any undue traffic congestion and will have negligible impacts on existing traffic, as the applicant expressed her father does not own a vehicle and does not drive. The requested use will not overload any public water, sewer, municipal systems, and is compatible with the surrounding area. Any special regulations for use set forth in the permit table are fulfilled. The requested use will not impair the integrity or character of the district or adjoining districts. Number 7, it will not, by its addition to the neighborhood, cause an excess of that particular use that would be detrimental to the character of said neighborhood. And number 8, the proposed use is in harmony with the purpose and intent of this ordinance. Number 9, the proposed use shall not be conducted in a manner to admit any dangerous, noxious, or other objectionable uses. So additionally, the application does not appear to trigger the tree and sidewalk ordinance. So that summarizes the special permit findings.
Appreciate that, Ms. Webb. Gentlemen, there's not a lot left to find here, but Mr. Swanton, do you have any further comments?
No,
Deliberations?
I think my colleagues summarized it pretty well. I will say that we've done quite a few of these in-law apartments recently, and this one is the least impactful one I have seen. So I think sort of take the cake there. So I can support this.
Excellent. I would agree. Mr. Chagnon?
Yes, I can support this. Thank you to Mr. Delisle and Ms. Webb for going down the bullet points. Meets them all. I can support this. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. And I would agree for the points made by all my colleagues that this is a solid application and I can certainly support it. So with that, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve special permit 2020-87 6 Caldwell's Court to allow an in-law apartment above the existing garage.
I'll second it. I'll second it, Ken Swanton.
So we have a motion to approve made by Ms. Webb, seconded by Mr. Swanton. And I will now take a vote. Mr. Delisle,
Yes.
Ms. Webb,
Yes.
Mr. Swanton,
Yes.
Mr. Chagnon,
Yes.
Mr. Moore, yes. All in the affirmative. The application is passed or approved. Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Our next item on tonight's docket is from Nicholas Pereno, 21 Goldsmith Drive, 2020-088, a special permit to allow an in-law apartment, something that we might be familiar with. I believe Lisa Mead is going to be presenting this on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry,
Yes.
Rachel Webb speaking. I need to recuse myself from this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Lisa Mead, Telemacosta, on behalf of Jennifer Tierney, who is the owner of the property, and Nick Pirano, who is her brother-in-law, who has assisted in this application. And everybody has a vested interest in taking care of the parents here. So this property is at 21 Goldsmith Drive, and I hope you find that this is also a least impactful in-law apartment using the existing structure. Jennifer lives at 21 Goldsmith Drive alone. She's seeking your approval to allow her to renovate a portion of the first floor of her home and to allow her to have an in-law apartment reconfigured inside. Jennifer's father had early onset Alzheimer's, which was diagnosed 6 years ago at a young age. And this will provide a space for her mother, Diane, and her father to live and have some financial stability, but still to be in contact with one of her children. It's important to note that all the construction will occur within the existing footprint and conversion of existing space. If you go to the next slide. The square footage of the proposed in-law is 651 square feet. I'm going to say that a couple of times because I think it was a little confusing on the original application that was filed. And so we filed some clarifications on that last week. So if you go to the next slide, please. So what you can see, this is 21 Goldsmith Drive, and the in-law apartment is going to be constructed in the space where the garage is right now. So that garage door, when you look at the plans we're going to look at in a minute, you'll see that there will be a entry door. That garage door will come off. It will be closed off. There'll be an entry door on the right side of that, and then a window directly next to it. And then it'll be finished with siding to match the rest of the house. So if you go to the next slide, please. What was originally proposed, and this goes to the requirement to have an additional parking space. So of course, Jennifer's dad does not drive, but her mother does. So there will be 2 cars, but nonetheless, we can show that there'll be an extra parking space. So originally there was a proposal to have a parking space directly head on adjacent to the garage. However, Jennifer's had a contractor out there. If you go to the next slide, please, Andy. And what they're actually proposing to do is it will be better to construct a parking space off to the right of the driveway so as not to impact the existing structure at all. So there's plenty of space there that won't impact anything. Won't have to be a larger curb cut. You just pull in and pull over. There's 2 cars. The driveway is wide enough for 2 cars, but they can have a 3rd car to the right there. So that's the preferred parking arrangement. If you could go to the next slide, please, Andy. So where you see here, what we tried to do is highlight on an additional submission this week. The red area, this is the 1st floor. The red area is the joint area, if you will. So there'll be an entry that'll come in, the new door that everybody will be able to enter, and then a window. And that's all common space for both the upstairs and the downstairs. So there's a closet for everybody, the stairs to get upstairs, and then a laundry for everybody. So that's common space. So the rest of that area, which will become the in-law apartment, is 651 square feet. So it's well within the 900 square foot requirement for an existing structure. So the project will be completed within the requirements of the ordinance. If you go to the next slide, Andy. The in-law apartment will be occupied by Jennifer's parents in line with the intent of the ordinance. There's a strong need and desire to have both the owner and her parents enjoy this type of living arrangement for the reasons I've stated. There'll be no change of footprint to the house, so there's not going to be any modification to, if you go to the next slide, there won't be any modification to the existing dimensional requirements of the house, so there won't be any changes to that because it will all be internal except for the garage door will be changed, as I noted earlier. Next slide, please. The gross square footage will be under the 900 square foot allowed. It will be 651 square feet for the in-law apartment itself. As I noted, the remainder of that space on the 1st floor is common area. In the next slide, we also provided additional parking as one additional parking space. The in-law unit is shown that it can be provided on all health and safety and building codes will be met as required by the ordinance. And the applicant agrees to comply with the remainder of the ordinance. That is that it will be recorded if it's granted, and they will agree that on the 11th and 23rd months following the grant or renewal of the special permit, the owner will certify that it continues to be an in-law apartment, and it will expire within 3 years if they don't come back in and renew it. So the applicant agrees with all of those terms. If it ceases to exist as an in-law, the kitchen or kitchen appliances that have been added will be removed. And of course, the zoning board may allow inspections to confirm compliance with the ordinance, and the applicant agrees with that as well. I have also provided 2 letters of support from neighbors on either side of Jennifer who support this application out on Goldsmith Drive. So from 23 and 19 Goldsmith Drive, you all have those in your packages, I hope. And with that, the applicant requests that the board approve the granting of a special permit for an in-law apartment at 21 Goldsmith Drive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Attorney Mead. At this point now, if the applicant is done presenting, we'll go to public comment. Again, if anyone would like to be heard, please raise your hand electronically and you will be recognized. Not seeing any hands. Give it a few.
Not seeing any, Chair.
Okay. All right. Seeing no requests for public comment, we close public comment and we'll go to questions from the board. Mr. Delisle, do you have any questions for the applicant? And remember to unmute.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I do have just one question, Attorney Mead. On the slide in the presentation showing the existing and proposed floor plans, just so I understand, the area in the red box is common area and therefore outside of the calculation of the 651 square feet, correct?
That is correct. And just as an aside, even if it were included, it would be under the under the 900 square feet.
Right,
It would
right.
be 863, but it is outside of that calculation. That is correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
That's my only question. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Delisle. Mr. Swanton, do you have any questions?
No, it's a thorough presentation. I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chagnon, any questions?
No questions. Great presentation, great use of an existing building without having any additions. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I also have no further questions at this time. So we'll close the questioning portion and we'll move on to deliberations. Comment and deliberations again, I'm sure will be expertly crafted around the in-law apartment and special permit requirements that we need to be aware of as we go through this. So Mr. Delisle, I'll start with you again.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I can support this project. I think that this, as Mr. Chagnon just said, this is a good use of an existing structure. So I can certainly support this. And I think that Attorney Mead took us expertly through the special permit findings, all of which were satisfied. So I don't think there's any need to go through those again. And in the interest of letting everyone get a chance to go through the special permit findings, I'll yield my time to Mr. Swanton and he can take us through the special permit findings.
Teamwork, I love it. Okay, thank you, Mr. Delisle. Mr. Swanton, a lot of pressure.
Oh, I tell you. Well, I think it nicely meets all the special permit findings. I suppose we could go through them. It's the proposed use is essential and desirable as a public convenience. It's not going to create any undue traffic congestion or provide any overload on the water or drainage. The special use regulations with regard to parking have been addressed. I don't think it impairs the integrity of the neighborhood. I think it's using the existing space. So I think it's in harmony with the neighborhood. I think it meets the special permit criteria. So I can support this application.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Swanton. Mr. Chagnon, do you have anything that you'd like to?
Nothing to add, Vice Chair. I can support the application as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would agree. I think the presentation was thorough and we've highlighted the issues that need to be highlighted in support. And I too can support this. I think it's something that it's nice when people do this. And with that, I will be looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the special permit application for 21 Goldsmith Drive, 2020-088.
I'll second the motion. Bud Shagnon.
Okay, we have a motion to approve made by Mr. Swanton, seconded by Mr. Chagnon, and we'll now go to a vote. Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Ms. Webb is recused. Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Chagnon.
Yes.
And Mr. Moore is a yes. So that's 4 in the affirmative. Application is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. With that, we turn the page to our next application, which is for 2224 Oak Street, Richard Morrow, care of Lisa Mead, Tellerman and Costa. Dimensional variance for lots 1 and 2, that would be 2021-089 and 2021-090. Lot split creating separate lot for existing home, and a lot split creating a separate lot for a new single family home. And might we hear from the applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Lisa Mead, Tellerman Costa, on behalf of Richard Morrow, Mr. Morrow. And actually with me this evening are well, not physically with me, but here available virtually are also Debbie and Jim Nelson. Debbie is the daughter of Richard Morrill, and Jim is the son-in-law. This is a property at 22 to 24 Oak Street in Newburyport. And Mr. Morrill has lived in this house on Oak Street, which he purchased with his wife since 1964. They would like to divide the lot. This would allow his daughter Debbie and her husband Jim, who grew up on Oak Street, that is Debbie did, to build a house next door on what would be created as the Beacon Street lot. The property is located in the R2 zoning district. Currently, the property includes Mr. Morrill's home, which is facing Oak Street and consists of 14,787 square feet and contains 290 feet of frontage on Oak and Beacon Street, Beacon Avenue. So that lot is non-conforming with regard to front yard setback, which is 7.2 feet, where 25 feet are required. Mr. Morrill proposes to break his currently merged two lots. And we'll show you a plan in a minute so you can see how the two lots were originally created, back into two lots of a different configuration. While the lots are shy of the required area and a couple of setbacks, they're not dissimilar to the other lots located on Oak Street and Beacon Avenue in this neighborhood. If you go to the next slide, please. So this is the lot overall right now as it exists. And Mr. Morrill's house there is to the right, as you can see, and it faces Oak Street. And then Beacon Avenue wraps around the corner. You can kind of see the weird shape that this lot is. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The proposal is to divide the lot. You can see the line and create a new single family lot right in the rear there facing Beacon Avenue. So lot one, I'm going to call it, so for the purposes of clarity in our discussion, would be the lot where Mr. Morrill's house currently exists. So if that were changed into a single family lot right there, that would be 10,000 square feet of required area, which is, but it would exist only in 6,889 square feet. So it would be shy of the lot area requirement. The only other thing that it would not meet is the existing setback, which is already non-conforming at 7.2 feet. So the variance we'd be seeking there is lot area and lot frontage, although we wouldn't be changing anything on that building at all. As to lot two, you can see the proposed red outline. There's currently a pool in this on this part of the property, but you can see the proposed red line outline of the house and the accessory garage next door. So lot two would consist of 7,898 square feet of area. I just point out as a little footnote here, after we submitted the application, the planning office called and thought we needed a variance also, not just for lot area, but for how lot area is defined with the box, if you will. And so I submitted that request, but it's actually, we're asking for a lot area variance, and that box helps define lot area. So it's all one variance. I just didn't want to confuse anybody by that second letter. So in any event, the lot area required is 10,000 square feet, and what we're proposing is 7,898. The frontage is 124, where 90 is required. The front setback would be off by 4 feet. So it would be 21 where 25 is required. It meets both side setbacks, and the rear setback would be 23 where 25 are required. So the variance would be for lot area, front and rear setbacks. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Andy. So this slide shows you how those current lots are existing as two. So they've merged, obviously, for zoning purposes, but those are the two lots. And so it's an odd shaped merged lot as it exists. I like to describe it kind of as a piece of pie bordered by the public street on two sides. Even once merged, the lots continue to have an odd shape, which narrows toward the west end of the lot, as you can see. The redrawing of the lot lines actually make a lot more sense, and they're more uniform with the remainder of the houses along Beacon Street, but they remain oddly shaped lots. So according to the standards, if you could go to the, well, actually keep it here for a minute, Andy. I've already gone through this. If you go back, because it's good to see how they compare to the other lots. So the shape of the, the variance standards go to shape, topography, soil condition. And here the shape of the merged properties is unique, even as merged or unmerged, and that the frontage on Oak is much longer from the opposite line on the westerly end of the lot. Additionally, as a result of this different in the end lines, the lot line along Oak Street is longer than the westerly lot line, even though they start on the same plane on the northerly lot line, making the sideline along Beacon an odd shape and unsquared, as you can see. Well, there you go. Once divided, the lots continue to be of an odd shape through no fault of the petitioner at all. We'll go back to that slide in a minute. So they continue to be odd shaped, which causes the need for the setback variances. Lot 1 continues to suffer the same fate of the overly long front yard line along Oak Street with the same angled line along Beacon. That doesn't change. And similarly, Lot 2 suffers a greater fate as the most narrow portion of the lot remains to the west. This fate is due to the layout of Beacon Avenue itself, which, unlike in any other section of Beacon Avenue, runs at a distinct angle, starting at the intersection of Oak, moving toward to the west to the rear property line, or Lot 2, and then straightens out once again to be more uniform when it gets closer to Riley Avenue. While there's little case law addressing the circumstances related to structures, here it does say under 40A Section 10 that you can have a hardship related to soil condition, shape, or topography, or such land or structures. And that may support the granting of a variance. Here, Lot 1, there is an existing non-conforming primary residential structure. There'll be no changes to that structure, and therefore there's nothing we can do that will change the existing front yard setback in that particular instance. Also, Mr. Morrow wishes to age in place and to be able to do so, to have the financial wherewithal to do so without having to sell his property to some third party. By selling his property to his daughter, it solves two problems. One, it liquidates the investment he and his wife made a number of years ago, and having his daughter and son-in-law close by him to assist as he ages. While financial hardship alone is not enough to justify the grant of variance, it can be a factor when combined with other hardships related to the land. Here, the financial hardship is in addition to the shape of the lot that we've talked about. The proposal does not derogate from the intent and purpose of the ordinance, where in fact the resulting lots are more uniform than the existing property. If you could go back, Andy, to the site plan, we can see that just for a moment. There we go. So if you look at this shape of the lot, so here, they become a little more uniform with the other lots in the neighborhood. And now if you could go back to the My Maps, Andy. So it won't derogate from the purpose and intent of the ordinance, where the lots become a little bit more uniform, even though they're still oddly shaped. Further, this is a single family residential neighborhood, which is what we're proposing to construct on the second lot. Indeed, in section 1C2, under the purpose section of the ordinance, it provides that one of the purposes is to conserve the value of the property with due consideration for the character of the zones and their particular suitability for particular uses. Hereby allowing the petitioner to redivide his property, the value is being conserved and the single family home use is consistent with the neighborhood. Further, the proposed change will not be detrimental to the neighborhood, as there will be no negative impacts on any neighbors as a result of the granting of the variance. Interestingly, the northerly side of Beacon Avenue has consistently uniform shaped lots, as we've noticed, and you can see that going down at 17 Oak, which is the corner across, 26 Beacon, 24 Beacon, and 20 Pine. 40 and 42 Beacon in the opposite direction, and 36 to 38 Beacon. The property was the odd lot out, so to speak. The proposed Lot 1 and Lot 2 are much more consistent with the shape of the lots on the northern side of Beacon Avenue. Further, the size of Lot 1 and Lot 2 are not inconsistent with the lots in the area, particularly those on the northerly side of Beacon Avenue, which I've noted here on this plan. So Lot 1 is 6,889 square feet, and Lot 2 is proposed to be at 7,808. 17 Oak, directly across the street, is 6,098. 26 Beacon is 8,799 square feet. 24, 8,450 square feet. 20 Pine, which is on the corner of Pine and Beacon, is 6,882. 36 to 38 Beacon right next door is 15,550. 40 Beacon, as you continue down to the bottom of the page, is 8,276. And 42 Beacon is 7,840. So it is neither, the proposed lots are neither the largest nor the smallest on the street and are much more consistent with the remaining lots. So Andy, if you could skip down to slide 9. I've already gone through these things. There we go. So what's being proposed is the proposed home is in keeping with the neighborhood. It's a very traditional Gambrel style home in this section of the city. And you can see that the Nelsons and Mr. Morrill have taken some time to design this home. And you can go to the next slide, Andy. That's the front elevation. And here's the rear elevation. And the next slide. And the left elevation. And the next slide, the right elevation. And the next slide, we have a rendering. As you can see, there's Mr. Morrill's house to the right and the proposed new home in the middle. So if you can go to the next slide. We've also provided letters of support, 5 letters of support from people who are all around the property, including those directly across the street. So all the direct abutters and those who are directly across the street on Beacon Avenue have all supported Mr. Morrill's efforts to build a home on this property. With that, I think that I'll just stop there. I have a couple more slides of the property itself. Why don't you go to the next slide, Andy? And just so you can see, this is looking down Beacon Avenue. So this is the corner of Beacon and Oak. And so you can see the long stretch of property there that's left open behind Mr. Morrill's house. And if you go to slide 18, I'll just show the architectural drawings of the garage. So we have the single car garage detached that would go right to the left of the house, directly to the left of the house. So with that, we believe that lots 1 and 2 that are to be created are both oddly shaped now and will remain oddly shaped, which is the reason for the setback requirement variance. They won't create any inconsistencies with the surrounding properties in this portion of the R2 district and on the northerly side of Beacon Avenue. The new lots will neither be the largest nor the smallest on the street, and therefore they will be consistent and not unusual. And the neighborhood supports this proposal, and the applicants request that the board grant the variances to allow the construction of a single-family home on a separate lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney Mead. With the presentation complete, we'll now move to public comment. So anyone in attendance tonight virtually wants to raise their hand and comment on this application, please raise your hand now. Seeing none. Is that correct, Andy? I don't see any.
I've seen none.
I don't want to cut anyone off in case they're struggling to click, but I think we're good at this point.
Agreed.
Seeing no hands raised virtually, we will close public comment and go to questions from the board. We'll lead off with Mr. Delisle.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. So the thing I think that's the key piece here is that you're taking this one lot that's 14,000 square feet and turning it into 2 lots that are one 6,800 square feet and the other 7,800 square feet, where 10,000 square feet is required. And so each one of the proposed lots requires a variance for that. And then the new lot would require a couple of other variances. And I think is that correct, Attorney Mead, that you need basically one variance for the lot facing Oak Street, the existing home, and then the new home would need a variance for for the lot area and then the front and the back setbacks?
Almost, Mr. Delisle. The lot one, the house, let's call it the original house lot. It would also need a variance for front yard setback, only because we're creating a new lot, and so therefore the 7.8 foot setback would need a variance as well, even though we're not doing anything.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay. Understood. Okay. And you, in your presentation, Attorney Mead, with respect to the issue of the odd shape of the lot, Andy, if you could go to the overhead slide of the neighborhood that shows the tax parcel numbers. Yes. So the two lots, 2919, or two tax parcels in 2918, were they merged before the Morals purchased them, or did the Morals purchase and merge the lots?
Well, the Morals certainly didn't merge the lots. Zoning merges lots, right? So the Morals purchased the two lots. They purchased the original one in 1964. And I think later in it was either 74 or 84. Hang on 1 minute. I'll look at the other lot was purchased, but the zoning changed, right? So zoning changed a couple of different times. So the house lot was purchased in 64 and the additional lot was purchased in 73. So I was a little bit off. So the zoning changed. So you might recall a few years ago, this was the R3 district still. And the lot area requirements were smaller. So 2918 would not, I don't think it would have been a buildable lot even under that. I don't have the measurements for 2918. But 2919 would have been a conforming lot, but for the side yard setback.
Right,
So
understood.
They didn't actually merge them, so to speak, right? They merged for zoning purposes, but they bought them at two different times.
Well, they also merged for purposes of title when a person acquires title to one property while owning a parcel next door to it. Don't they merge for purposes of title where you have one owner?
No, not necessarily. Not unless your deeds are put together. These deeds have never been put together. You actually have to do that. You'd have to put them both together. So they could carry, and that's why they're two tax parcels, because at the registry of deeds,
Right.
they continue to be two separate parcels. But for zoning purposes, they've merged. Let's say, for example, let's just go down to 36 to 38 Beacon. And let's say that house had a house on it and there was an empty lot next door, 28-1C, right? And that was empty. And the zoning was what it is today. Let's say those are two both conforming lots. And so now we increase the zoning lot and we require 20,000 square feet per lot. Then 28-1C would merge into 36-38 if they were owned by the same person with nobody doing anything. They wouldn't have had to take any action to do that. So it's just for the purposes of zoning, by operation of law, they merge.
Right, okay. By operation of law. And then the zoning changes and then you're left with a more restriction on what you can do on your property.
Right, so you have two non-conforming lots that end up merging, correct?
Yeah, okay. Okay, that's good information to know. All right, I think that's all I have for questions for right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Delisle. Ms. Webb, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I do. Attorney Mead, do you have any comparable information for lot area going up Oak Street on the abutting property and maybe one or two up from that?
I don't. I mean, you can, this, one of the reasons I like to include my maps is because you can see, right?
Mhm.
I would suggest to you that the lots going up Oak Street are probably a little bit bigger than what our two proposed lots are, because they're narrower, but they're longer, right? So I don't know. I didn't, I did it down Beacon because that's what the new lot faces. But I didn't do it up Oak Street. The 17 Oak is there because it's a corner lot. So I did not,
Well,
I didn't compare up Oak Street.
the existing house is on Oak Street, so.
Right, but, and it faces 17 Oak across the street, right?
Mhm.
Right. And
Yeah,
certainly
so
39-33, I don't know what number that is, Oak, but which is to the left of 17 Oak. That's probably a little bit bigger than what's being proposed facing Oak for sure.
yeah, no, I was just looking at, 2920, the direct abutter on Oak. It looks to be about the same exact size as 2919.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I didn't do that. Still remains a corner lot. Let's call, lot 1 still remains a corner lot, which is why I compared it to the other homes on Beacon Ave, right? So it still has frontage on Beacon Ave. We carry up over 74 feet of frontage on Beacon Ave, continues for that lot.
Was the pie-shaped parcel on the corner, the 29-18, was that when the current people bought it, were they buying it from the city?
No, it was the whoever did this of course was all laid out by a developer at some point in time, right? No, they did not buy it from the city. I have the deed reference.
It's just so odd that it was ever a separate parcel to begin with.
So who knows how they laid out that, which would have been it's a subdivision, it's an extension of the city streets back when they laid out that part of Beacon and the Oak Street carrying on down that area, Riley. So I didn't do a full title going back to what the origins of that lot were. No, there was it was owned by, I just got a text. This is the problem with our meetings, right? So it was actually owned by the person who owned at the time 29-17, and they had a greenhouse on it.
Oh, across the street.
Yeah.
Interesting. So this, the zoning was changed. This was downzoned from R3 to R2. And now the minimum square footage required is 10,000 square feet. I guess, I initially had real concerns about this with the two new lots being both deficient in area. But then when you kind of compare it to the other lots along Beacon, the proposal looks like it might make some sense, but I still have not sort of finalized my thought process on this, and I'll defer to some of my colleagues for further questions.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Webb. Mr. Swanton, would you like to ask some questions of the applicant?
Yeah, could you put up the plot plan? I had a question about the setbacks. Andy, the
Slide 3.
slide 3, there you go. We've talked about the lot size. They're both being below the 10,000 square feet that's now required. My question is about the setbacks for the new house. I mean, you're looking for a variance on the lot size. Why also make the house too close to both its front and back lot lines? I mean, was there a way to do this so you didn't have to get variances there as well?
So, obviously, Mr. Swanton, there's a way to do a number of things, right? And this was economics. My clients and I had a long conversation about this. because of the style of the house and the construction methods used in it, this is a standard size, so to speak. And so it made it more economical to do the construction. If the setback overage in the front and the rear of, I think it's, hang on a minute, I just want to be accurate on this, 4 feet and 2 feet make a difference to this board. Excuse me, my client is willing to reduce the edges of that rear and the front of the house.
Okay, thank you. My other question, I think it's actually more for the planning department. You know, we got a staff report before each meeting, and they had suggested that this is one that we should perhaps not approve tonight. And I'd like to give the planning department a chance to comment upon why they recommend that.
Sure. Well, actually, this is Andy Port, if I could speak to that. The office respects whatever decision the board will issue, but the point we were trying to make in the staff report, and this is something that's comes up quite frequently in Massachusetts with these variances, is whether or not there's a hardship involved here and how much of a variance is being granted. The board, the ZBA in particular, compared to some other permitting boards, does have to think about so-called precedent setting. And I don't think it's hard to believe that, you know, applicants in the future or attorneys in the future will ask for similar relief elsewhere in the city for smaller than lot sizes that are required under zoning by the city council. So the concern that we would note there, just, you know, there were some variances debated a few years back that were issued by this board, or different composition of this board. But there were debates had about whether or not the board was going too far in granting variances or essentially exceptions from the zoning regulations that have been adopted by the council. So the concern there was just that the board be fully cognizant if it wishes to grant the relief. Not only is it granting a substantive, you know, numerical variance from the ordinance requirements to create 2 lots that are non-conforming, where you have one right now that's merged to just better meet the zoning requirements. And you also have the potential for others to cite this application as comparable relief to be granted elsewhere in the city, whether the same neighborhood or elsewhere. So that's the point we're trying to make. You know, the board will have to take that into account amongst its other considerations.
If I could, Mr. Swanton, might I address that just for a moment?
Go ahead,
Sure.
Attorney.
Yeah. So, you know, so first of all, I certainly respect what the position is as staff. But that's why you have independent boards, because every situation is unique. And there, you know, I don't need to tell you, while I may tell you, well, you've done it before, they're not precedent setting, and every single thing is unique. And what I have described to you here is probably not applicable to any other lot in Newburyport. Can I find another lot in Newburyport that I can make an argument for a variance on? Sure, but you have the independent authority to decide whether or not all these conditions are met. And we have showed consistency throughout this neighborhood through, you know, through the size of the lots and things of that, and the use of single family homes and whatnot. In addition, not to say the least of which is that the neighborhood actually supports this proposal. So while I certainly respect Mr. Port's position, the board's decisions are not precedent setting. And you know that because myself and others try to argue that, obviously, at certain times, but you get to make a decision on each separate application that comes before you. And there are times that relief needs to be granted. Otherwise, we wouldn't even have a variance provision in the ordinance or in the statute to allow this board to do that. So while I respect the position of the office, I don't think that what's being requested here is out of the ordinary for this area, for this street, for this neighborhood, and is consistent with the purposes and intent of the ordinance, as I stated earlier.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you both providing answers to that, and I have no other questions at this time.
Okay, thank you all. Mr. Chagnon, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I've got one question. Maybe it goes to Andy or Attorney Mead. One of the previous zoning board of appeals I served on, we had kind of a rule. We thought it was based on mass law, but perhaps it's not. that if you have 2 deeds and 2 tax parcels, it doesn't matter whether zoning merges them or not, when it comes time to split them, as we're being requested. So we're splitting 2919 and 2918 down the middle, if you will. We're actually creating 2 separate splits. 2919 would be split down the middle and 2918 would be split down the middle. And we were of the understanding back then anyways, that this was taboo. This is something that is a fool's errand. So perhaps I'm under misguided information, but this just seems like because there are 2 specific parcels, there must be 2 deeds, 2 titles, and 2 tax parcels. We're actually creating 4 lots. Just maybe someone could explain that.
Mr. Chang, you actually bring up a really good point, and thank you very much, because neither myself nor the staff report commented on this, but you should know it. So you are not actually splitting the lots. That's the job of the planning board, right? You're giving approval that for a lot split, these dimensions are okay. Then there has to be an A&R plan filed with the planning board, which would create actually these 2 lots as presented to you, based upon your dimensional variances, if that's what's approved. So an A&R plan would have to be filed, which would create 2 lots and not 4. Nothing else. This plan itself couldn't be recorded at the Registry of Deeds absent an A&R plan being created and approved by the planning board.
This is Andy.
Andy, you have a comment on that?
Just Andy's comments. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, this is Andy. Just as to the question that was raised earlier, I didn't quite follow. I haven't seen any local regulation, and certainly not aware of any state statute in zoning that speaks to that. I think, as I understand the issue that you were describing, I don't know what the other community was or what the other regulations were, but I don't see in concept what you're describing as being at issue here. I think it's just a question of the proportion of the variance being requested and, compatibility, with the neighborhood, if you will.
Okay. No other questions, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chagnon. I don't have any further questions. I think there've been some excellent questions from my colleagues. So at this point, closing questioning and going to deliberations, and back around the horn, we go back up to Mr. Delisle.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Again, where I started with my questions, I think I mentioned that this was a hard one because we were being asked to split a 14,000 square foot lot into 2 smaller lots. And we've had some really good discussion here, and some good questions have been asked, and some interesting points have been raised. And I think that one of the points was with respect to the downzoning. And I'm wondering, I believe that the whole purpose of the downzoning was to create a situation where we'd have less density. And that's the idea behind downzoning. And so I'm wondering here, if we're splitting this lot, creating 2 lots, and then building another house, if that sort of flies in the face of what the city council was trying to do when they downzoned this area. So that sort of troubles me. With respect to the 4-part test as to the variance, I can see some things working out in favor of the applicant, and there are a couple that I'm having a hard time with. So I'm struggling with this one, and I think, that being said, I'll turn it over to my colleagues to hear their comments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Delisle. Ms. Webb?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too am struggling with this because of the, as Mr. Delisle said, and it was my comment originally about the downzoning aspect, that I think the real intent of that is to prevent more dense development. And clearly the fact the applicant's asking for a variance to do what they want to do is indicative of the fact that what they want to do does not meet the current zoning. So our board's supposed to provide relief for that where there's hardship, and I'm not seeing the hardship really. Yes, there's a slight, angle to the lot. I don't see that as a tremendous hardship in this particular circumstance. And I think, the potential result of having two undersized lots, and it's, they're fairly significantly undersized lots from the 10,000 square foot required minimum. It's hard for me to think about approving this.
All right, thank you, Ms. Webb. Mr. Swanton.
Yeah, I mean, I too am struggling with this one. I think Ms. Webb actually said it quite well. There's the human interest side of this story where families own this for a long time. The daughter would like to move there. Really works well for the family. The neighbors don't mind. That's all very compelling. But the flip side of it is, how many other lots are there around where you could do this? And why do we have zoning? And so I guess I'm having a hard time getting behind this proposal.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Swanton. Mr. Chagnon.
I agree with my colleagues, right out of the box, creating two undersized lots is of great concern to me. And then to have it, the addition of the fact that we're now asking for, new nonconformities for the second house and a new one for the first house. I don't know, it just seems like it's a mess rolling downhill. So I am also struggling with supporting this petition.
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Go ahead.
So I don't like messes rolling downhill.
No, no one does.
Because they just get bigger, right? So what I would like to do is continue this because I think what I'd like to do is provide some context for the zoning changes that took place as expressed, as some inquiries expressed by the board to make sure that the downzoning went this far, and actually to look at the changes in the zoning that took place since the Morals purchased the property. And then also to address some of the other issues related to the proposed construction on the second lot and the number of variances that are received on that lot. And take a look at some of the other, quote, potential lots in the area that this might occur or could be subject to this. So if the board is open to that, we'd like a continuance to your next meeting so that we could get some of that information for the board, perhaps to take away some of those concerns.
I think that makes sense given the flavor and the direction of the discussions, and we'll put that to the board. I believe our next meeting is the 26th. So you're requesting a continuance to the 26th.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, so before we have a request to continue this application to our next meeting on the 26th to have some more information presented to us.
This is Stephen
Further
Doyle.
discussion, yeah.
I'll make a motion to continue the variance applications for 22 to 24 Oak Street, application 2021-089 and 2021-090 to January 26th, 2021. In making that motion, is that the number of the application is 2021-089, or is it 2020-089? Andy?
I think that should be 2020, Mr.
Yeah, I
Delaney.
believe that should be
Yeah.
2020. I think that might be just a typo, and I will check with Diane, but I'm pretty sure that's
Yeah,
just.
sorry, that's in the draft motion. So
It
it's,
starts in the, yeah.
I'll second
So
it, Ken Swanton.
oh, good, okay.
Okay, so we have the corrected application number 2020-089 and 2020-090. Motion to continue to our meeting on the 26th, made by Mr. Delisle, seconded by Mr. Swanton. And we now take a vote. Mr. Delisle,
Yes.
Ms. Webb,
Yes.
Mr. Swanton,
Yes.
Mr. Chagnon,
Yes.
and Mr. Moore is a yes. All in the affirmative, the continuance is granted, and we will revisit this on the 26th.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the board.
Thank you. Okay, our final public meeting item tonight is for application 2020-091, a special permit for nonconformities for 18 Strong Street to construct a second-story addition above an existing single-story home, resulting in an upward extension of pre-existing non-conforming rear setback. Might we hear from the applicant?
Yeah, hi.
A little echo.
Hi, my name is Peter Zani. I'm the
Peter,
manager
this
for
is-
18 Strong LLC.
Peter, this is Andy.
Currently, we are remodeling the both 18 and 16 Strong Street. The exterior, we have permits to do roofing, siding, decks, windows, along with the existing 8x15 mudroom on the side of 18 Strong Street, as per the plot plan. What we are looking for from you guys is to add a second story onto the existing first floor. It is non-conforming with the rear setback of the lot. We are not increasing any non-conformities. We are looking to do a second story that will blend in nicely with the existing home, both fascia soffits, the whole the home, instead of that ugly shed roof on the side of the house there that literally right now is falling off before we repaired it. So what we are coming to you is, again, to put a second story on top of that and replace or move some of the windows on the rear of the house here to different locations for bathrooms and bedrooms alike, if that falls under your jurisdiction. So we look to you for your input on this matter. We are also looking to add a rear door to the backyard and deck for access to the rear yard off of the new kitchen at this location.
Okay, is that it for now, Mr. Zani?
I am open to any questions.
Okay, great.
People may
Thank you.
have.
All right, first we will thank you for the information on what you're trying to do. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Have you lost us? We can hear you.
Yeah, Peter, we can hear you.
Hello.
I don't think you can hear us.
Peter, can you hear us?
Hello. Jenna, help.
Give John a second to correct this.
Not sure why he can't hear us. Must be
I
something.
know it seemed to be working fine. Peter, any luck now? Can you hear us? All right, now it seems like we lost him altogether.
Peter, are you able to unmute yourself?
Hello.
Can you hear us now? A one-way communication.
Hello. Jenna. Jenna, help.
Let's call in the cavalry. Hopefully.
They can't hear me. Hello?
Hello?
We can hear him. He just doesn't hear us.
Is anyone there?
Yep. Can you hear us?
Be back in here.
Peter, we can hear you.
Peter, we got you. Can you hear us?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Okay.
Get me back on this.
I'm not sure if, depending on where the applicant's able to go at this point technologically, I don't know if, it sounded like he was wrapping up his presentation. I don't know. I'll leave it to you as to how you want to handle things at this point.
Yeah.
but-
I mean, it seemed like he was done. I was just trying to confirm that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's just, I don't know.
we-
I don't know if he'll be able to resolve his issue.
We can look for public comment and circle back, or, I mean, I think we should be able to communicate with him, but we could kind of move forward with the meeting. He should be able to hear comments, though. And I see a couple of
Well-
hands raised.
I can't hear them.
We hear you. Can you hear us?
Get me on that. They could hear me on the phone.
Yeah, if I had a number to call him.
Andy, do you have an email address for him
Yeah.
or something? Some other way of trying to contact him?
I mean,
Yeah, I do have an email address here I can try. I don't know whether they'll be checking it. But
Max, if
Yeah.
you can hear me, please chime in.
we can hear you.
His phone
I
number is on
cannot
his
hear them.
application. His phone number is on his application. Can you just call him?
And maybe while we're trying to get back in touch with Mr. Zanni, we can, I mean,
Yeah, but it was a big echo.
we could move to the approval of the minutes. Can we blend, I guess is the question. Put this on pause for a second, move to the business meeting, give the technology a chance to catch up and at least keep moving forward. Are we on the phone with him, trying to get a hold?
I am trying to get him on the
Okay.
phone. Everything was working fine. Not sure what
Yeah.
happened there.
Rocky start, and then it seemed fine.
Hello, is this Peter? Hi, Peter. This is Andy Port from the city of Newburyport. Yeah, why don't I try this? Why don't I try to put you on speakerphone on my phone, and if you can speak, hopefully the folks will be able to hear you through my computer as if you're here, and then we could proceed. Okay. Okay, Peter, could you speak up for a moment?
Yeah, hi, how are you? Did you get any of the presentation at all, or was it all gone?
Yeah, we got the presentation. I think we were confirming whether or not you were finished with your presentation before the board went to deliberation or public comment.
Yeah, I believe I have pretty much completed. I'm looking naturally to, as I said, for the second story and some being able to relocate some windows and add doors if that falls under your jurisdiction on 18 Strong Street, please.
Okay, thank you very much. You can hear us now, right?
Yes, I got you on the speakerphone, yes.
Excellent. Okay, so with your presentation having completed, we'll now move to public comment. So I see a few hands raised, and glad you're back with us so you can hear them. So Andy, if you want to queue up.
Yeah. Chair, if I'm missing something, the two hands I see raised are both from Peter. I don't know if.
Okay, that was probably looking for help.
Yeah, I just didn't see any other folks that were interested in speaking, but I'm happy to wait longer if you'd like.
I think people have had long enough time to raise their hands, so we'll give it another few seconds, but Yeah, I'm comfortable moving on. All right, seeing no public comment
I do have
requested.
the letters of approval from the neighbors that I have attached on that you people should have, that they are for this addition.
Thank you. Duly noted. And with the public comment done, we will move on to questions from the board. So Mr. Delisle, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I have one question, yes. With regard to the drawings, I was just having a little bit of difficulty. I think I have the answer to this, but with respect to the side where the addition will be, is the addition going to span the 40-foot width of the structure, or just the 15-foot width of the existing 3-season room?
Mr. Zanik, did you hear the question?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Peter?
Yeah, it's an 8x15 second-story structure. We're not changing any nonconformities that already exist.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all I have,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Webb, do you have any questions?
Mr. Delisle stole my question. I was going to ask the same exact question. Thank
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry.
He's good. He also gets to go first, right? So, all right. Thank you, Ms. Webb. Mr. Swanton,
No, I have no questions. I had the same one.
it's killing you. Okay, thank you. Mr. Chagnon.
Wow, same thing. Had the same question, and we got it answered. I'm all set. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And I have no further questions of the applicant either. So we'll close questioning. We'll move to comment and deliberations. So Mr. Delisle, you get to lead off again.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I think that I don't see any addition of a new non-conformity here, and it would appear that based on the comments of the neighbors, the written submitted comments of the neighbors, that our second prong of our special permit test for non-conformities will be met too, which escapes me at this moment. I would like to ask Mr. Zanni one more question if I could do so, even during this portion of the hearing.
Sure.
With respect to the cladding of the building, Mr. Zanni, whatever you're putting on as part of the remodeling of the building, will that be carried forward onto the addition? Or,
Yes,
or what are you planning there?
Natural throughout, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I think with respect to my comments, I can support this application.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Delisle. Ms. Webb?
I also can support this application, and I just wanted to add that the staff report notes that the project does not appear to trigger the tree and sidewalk ordinance. I guess I just wanted to clarify, is this another property that's like in the middle of the block here? I'm just looking at the MyMap photo from the staff report, so that I was just questioning like whether the property really has a lot of frontage, or is it just the driveway access?
If you'd like, I can pull that property up so you can see how it relates to the rest of the properties.
Thank you, that would be great.
Yeah.
It is just a driveway access,
Okay,
but we have four to five parking spots for that unit alone.
There you go.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. Picture's worth 1,000 words, right?
Okay, thanks, Ms. Webb. Mr. Swanton, do you have comments, deliberation?
Yeah, no, I walked by this and was surprised to look down this long driveway, and that's basically the frontage. No, I can support this. I think it's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chagnon?
Yeah, I can also support this. makes sense. And again, as our colleague stated, it doesn't seem to create any other new nonconformities. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. I would agree with the comments of my colleagues, and I can certainly support this as presented. So with that, we'll close deliberations, and we're looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion, Rachel Webb, to approve the special permit 2020-091 for 18 Strong Street, special permit for nonconformities.
I'll second that. Stephen Delisle.
A motion to approve made by Ms. Webb, seconded by Mr. Delisle. We now go to a vote. Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Ms. Webb.
Yes.
Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Chagnon.
Yes.
Mr. Moore is also a yes. All in the affirmative. The application is approved. Thank you, Mr. Zanni. And thanks for everyone being patient while we tried to reconnect. Thanks for the effort, Andy, to get him on the phone and make that happen. It was great. With that application being approved, that concludes the public forum for tonight. And we'll close that and move on to our business meeting, which will first consist of approval of the minutes from our brief meeting on the 8th of December. And looking for any comments or additions to the minutes. Any comments or adds that anyone has seen and wants to make us aware of right now? And if not,
I have something really minor. This is Ken Swanton, which is it's just a page numbering. I mean, it was a marathon meeting. It went to almost midnight. The minutes are 8 pages long. Page 1 is 1 of 8. Page 2 is 2 of 4. Page 3 is 3 of 4. And I don't know, it's just a little thing. They should all be of 8. So just a minor little thing. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, at
Yep.
the bottom of the page.
Yep.
But other than that, I would move that we approve the minutes as written.
Mr. Chair, I had a couple of minor typos,
okay,
which I did forward to Gretchen. So
okay.
I'm not even going to address them. They were so minor, but.
So typos and page numeration being clarified.
Yeah, I would like to amend my motion to include Rachel's minor mods.
Perfect. So we have a motion to approve with minor mods and page corrections by Mr. Swanton.
I'll second that, Rachel.
Second by Ms. Webb, and we go to a vote. Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Ms. Webb.
Yes.
Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Chagnon.
Yes.
Mr. Moore is a yes. The minutes to 12/8/20 are approved with said changes. The second item, or that's last item on the business meeting, is to make sure that we're comfortable with the decisions as they are written from prior meetings. We have already done the 1214 Harrison Street written approval earlier by request of the applicant. So we need to look at the 68 Middle Street, and we'll look at that one first. So as everyone check the draft of this and
Mr. Moore, could I just make one comment on the Harrison Street one?
Sure.
I realize that we already approved it. My first name was spelled incorrectly on the Harrison Street one. I'm sure that that's something that can be remedied as a Scrivener's error without having to cause a lot of problems.
Yes, apologies from the office for that. We'll take care of that.
No problem. No problem.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So with the Scrivener's error being taken care of on the Harrison Street, are there any issues or discussion to be had on the decision of 68 Middle Street? None?
None.
Hearing none. Look for a motion.
This is Bud Shagnon. I'd
I'll
make a
move.
motion to approve the decision for 68 Middle Street, 2020-053 as submitted.
Second, Ken Swanton.
All right, motion to approve as written, 2020-053, made by Mr. Chagnon, second by Mr. Swanton, and we go to a vote. Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Ms. Webb.
Yes.
Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Chagnon.
Yes.
Mr. Moore is also a yes. So we move forward with that decision as written. And lastly, 32 Franklin Street, 2020-081 and 2020-082. Are we comfortable? Any comments on this draft decision as written?
I think so.
Okay. Hearing no edits or no suggestions. We can look for a vote. So we look for a motion. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve 32 Franklin Street? Or do we want to discuss?
This is Bud Shagnon. I'll make a motion to approve the draft decision for 32 Franklin Street, 2020-081 and 2020-082 as submitted.
I'll second it, Ken Swanton.
Excellent. A motion to approve the minutes, 32 Franklin Street, made by Mr. Chagnon, second by Mr. Swanton. We now go to a vote. Mr. Delisle.
So I was absent for this one
Thank
and didn't participate in this decision. Do I still vote on this or not?
I would say, unless you're qualified, I don't think you do.
Right.
Andy? I would say
I
no.
don't know.
Yeah, I would say no. So we'll say no there. Ms. Webb?
Yes, we're voting on the approval of the draft decision. for
Draft decisions, yeah.
32 Franklin, yes.
Yes. Mr. Swanton?
Yes.
Mr. Chagnon?
Yes.
Mr. Moore is a yes. That's 4 in the affirmative. And therefore we'll move ahead with 32 Franklin Street as written. Well, that concludes everything on the agenda for tonight. First meeting down. It's not midnight. That's good.
Yay.
It's not a lot of enthusiasm, but we'll take it. So now. I
Move
think
to
we'll-
adjourn.
There we go.
Second.
Excellent. Voice vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Hey.
Aye.
Aye.
I better hear no nays. All right, excellent. Meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Have a
Thanks
good
so
night.
much.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.